In our previous episode, we talked about how America has basically just gone ahead and decided that we gave flattening the curve the old college tribe, but it's time to reopen the country, even if that means 3,000 deaths per day for the next several months. Sorry, Grandma, you've had a good run, but if you truly love this economy, you'll die for it. Them's the breaks.
Grandma got run over by economy.
Yep. My country, the United States, yearns for freedom, and clearly, based on all these protests, the vast, overwhelming majority of Americans have had enough of this nonsense and are ready to get back to normal ASAP.
Well, maybe not. I mean, it's easy to look at big angry mobs of people and assume that they represent the will of the people, but various polls conducted over the last few weeks indicate that most Americans actually are not super into the idea of reopening America right now. An NBC Wall Street Journal poll conducted in mid-April found that 58% of people are more worried that the U.S. will move too quickly in loosening restrictions versus 32% who are more worried the U.S. will take too long to loosen restrictions. 37% of these respondents voted for Trump versus 40% who voted for Clinton. So it's pretty evenly split politically. We need to stop politicizing the virus. Listen, it's a recurring trend across these polls that even most Republicans aren't in agreement with the people doing the protesting, but yeah. Yeah,
I mean, and there's also probably a lot of cognitive dissonance involved in this as well.
Yes.
But yeah, another poll, an NPR PBS poll conducted April 21st through the 26th, found that 85% of people think it's a bad idea to have students returning to school, and that includes 71% of Republicans. 65% of respondents think it's a bad idea to return to work without further testing for the virus, with Republicans pretty evenly split on this one, with 51% saying that it's a good idea and 47% saying it's a bad idea. 91% of respondents said it's a bad idea to allow large groups of people to attend sporting events, including 83% of Republicans. 80% of respondents said it's a bad idea to start letting people eat in restaurants again, including 63% of Republicans. Half the respondents said they or someone in their household had either lost their job or had hours reduced due to the virus. So a lot of these people oppose reopening the country, even though lockdown has hurt them financially, personally.
Yeah, a Morning Consult Politico poll conducted April 24th through the 26th, that found that 61% of Americans are more concerned about the public health impact of a coronavirus versus the just 31% who said they're more concerned about the economic impact of the coronavirus. 67% believe that it's currently more important for the government to address the spread of coronavirus versus 25% who think it's more important that the government address the economy. 73% say Americans should keep social distancing for as long as needed to curb the spread of this virus, even if it means continued damage to the economy. And that's versus just 15% who say we need to stop social distancing. We need to stimulate the economy. I don't care how close you stand to me. Cough in my mouth.
That's a loud 15%.
By the way, I had to go out for waters today. Nobody is paying any attention to this fucking social distancing. And the worst thing that I've seen is, and it should be legal to punch someone in the face for this, people wearing their masks without covering their nose. Yeah. It just hangs right here. Like 90% of the people I saw, just masks on right here, not covering the nose.
It's a big problem.
And also just talking with their friends and family, not social distancing. I literally was standing in line to get inside the Target, and this woman and her mother, who was elderly, clearly the most concerned, just on my heels. And I literally turned around and went, Jesus fucking Christ, there's marks on the ground. Ugh.
A lot of Karens out there. Anyway, most recently a Washington Post, University of Maryland poll that was conducted April 28th through May 3rd, very recently. In that one, respondents were asked whether businesses like gun stores, restaurants, salons, barbershops, retail stores, gyms, golf courses, and movie theaters should reopen. And in pretty much every case, respondents were against these businesses being allowed to be open by more than a 2-to-1 ratio. Golf courses were a little closer, with 41% saying to let them open and 59% saying no.
We're opening ours on Friday, apparently.
Golf is back on the menu, boys.
But I would assume that you have to play solo every single time?
Yeah, and they're closing down like the clubhouse. I don't know if it's solo, but they probably won't be renting out carts to groups. I don't know. I mean, I'd say like in terms of sports, golf is already pretty social distance to begin with. It's the least risky activity.
You have your own clubs, your own fucking balls. Don't touch my shit.
Yeah. And I'm sure they'll require masks and shit.
Yeah, of course.
And you already have the one glove.
Yeah, just throw a rubber one on the other hand.
But on the other hand, golf courses, everyone's like kind of whatever. But people definitely do not seem to want to go to the movie theater right now. 82% said that they should remain closed. Only 18% said that they should be allowed to be open. So, asked whether they'd feel comfortable going to a retail clothing store or eating out in restaurants right now, 67% say they'd be uncomfortable at a retail store, and 78% said they'd be uncomfortable eating at a restaurant.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of skewed on that one because it's like if the restaurant, when it is allowed to open, not right now, but Florida already has them open. My dad was like, me and your mom went out to so-and-so's last night. Finally feels good to be back in a restaurant. Okay, Dad, you 66-year-old weirdo. But restaurants, if it's spread out, retail stores, everyone's just crossing paths and bumping into each other and reaching over each other. Like that seems a bit more risky to me.
Well, they said like months ago, they're like, it'll probably be fine if supermarkets just space their aisles wider. As far as I can tell, no one has done this. Because they're like, but then our inventory is...
exactly.
Come on.
You know who's going to get hit worst? I was just thinking about this, is like all of the fine dining restaurants where like, sure, they've started doing takeout and delivery through apps and stuff like that, but when you're a fine dining restaurant, you go for the like experience. That's part of the cost. If you're
now it's going to be like going to the airport.
Yeah, and they're raising the costs of the already expensive meals to offset the percentages that the apps take. Yeah. So it's like, why am I paying for this? I could cook it at home. I pay for the waiter to grovel to every need.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, that's my theory about why people want the economy to open back up. The people that are out there loud, they just want to be able to yell at like low-level employees again. They haven't been able to do that for a while.
They feel powerless.
Yeah.
The power, very small power they had is taken away.
There's no one to be subservient to me during lockdown. I need that.
Yeah.
So anyway, the point is, of all these polls that we're showing you, is that despite the big reopen protest crowd being the most vocal, the majority of Americans are not in favor of things going back to the way they were right now, at least. And when things do reopen in the places that are just going ahead and doing that, it's not going to cure the economy.
No.
A whole lot of people are going to continue staying at home as much as possible and avoiding large crowds. Restaurants and bars and gyms and so on, they'll be open, but they'll still be in financial trouble because business is not going to be returning to normal levels anytime soon. Meanwhile, the infection rates will increase because stopping social distancing will definitely, 100%, create a new disease spike. I mean, up to you whether that's an acceptable thing or not, but it's going to increase the spread of the virus.
Yeah.
So I mean, seems pretty lose-lose. Things are far from over.
And I think we should clarify on two things again. One is that at no point was this about like bringing it down to like zero infections, although that would be amazing.
Yeah.
The point was to flatten the curve so that hospitals can properly process people who need to be in ER, intensive care, on ventilators, or just being treated. That's the whole point. Yes, we are very much aware that 90% of people are probably going to get this at some point to varying degrees. Also, to clarify from yesterday, we said at the beginning of the episode, and we understand that, like, yes, there's a lot of will and want to go get back to normal, and one of the reasons for that is because a lot of people lost their jobs or have had their income taken away at certain percentages, but it's at the same time, we were focusing mainly on the people who are out with AK-47s at state houses.
Yeah, I don't, like, if you look into these crowds, the fact that pretty much everyone doing these big protests, especially like the one in Michigan, are like white people who are at least visually look pretty like middle class. Like it's not a crowd of people that looks like, you know, service industry people who are upset that like the hotel they work at is not in business. Like these are middle class white people with Ford F-150s who may be affected financially by this, but like I said before, I think they kind of just want someone to yell at.
Yes.
Because if they've taken their power away from them. They can't speak to the manager if there's not any managers out there.
Hello?
Is there a manager I can speak to?
What we need to do, remember how they came up with that BetterHelp, where you could talk to someone on video chat about your problems?
Yeah.
We need to just create like a version of that where someone just cosplays as a manager and just will take
like,
it.
Sir, we are so sorry.
We are going to make this right.
We're going to do whatever we can.
Whatever it takes, because the customer, you, sir, is always right. Even when you're yelling and cursing at me, you are right.
Yeah.
I think we'd make a killing.
We probably would. That's therapy for a lot of Americans.
We should start a Cameo where it's like $100, but you can just yell at us.
Yeah.
Like it's the opposite of Cameo. You send us a video of you yelling at us, and we'll film.
Sir, we are
reacting.
so sorry.
We're so sorry.
We're going to do whatever it takes to make this right for you.
I think it'd be a good business, but if someone steals it, fuck you.
Yep.
Anyways, on top of all of that, we also have, of course, terrifying bees to worry about. Murder hornets, actually. They're technically called Asian giant hornets, but that's racist. But anyways, murder hornets is the name that sticks because New York Times called them that.
Yeah, and it's a great name.
Yeah, it is. It's a cool name.
It really gets the headline.
Yeah, it sounds like a sports team.
Mm-hmm.
But the XFL's not coming back, so
oh well. Yeah.
And it's a pretty accurate description of these terrifying, absurdly large creatures that can grow up to around 2 inches long or 50 millimeters. They've got a 6 millimeter long venomous stinger, and they kill up to 50 people a year over in Japan. Fortunately, Asia is all the way, over there. There's a big old ocean separating us from these murder hornets, so we are safe. Or at least we were.
Yeah. So murder hornets are in the news because they seem to have somehow finally managed to smuggle themselves across the entire Pacific Ocean into the continental United States, specifically Washington State.
Just like coronavirus, the first hit.
But also north of there in British Columbia in Canada. And this is bad because while they're scary as hell for humans, they're much worse for honeybees. They attack honeybee hives and they just absolutely fucking massacre the entire colony. They literally bite all the bees in half and then they fly home with their thoraxes in their mouth to go feed their young.
Cool.
It's pretty metal.
Yeah.
But in Washington...
We need the bees.
We need those bees.
We don't need the hornets. Have you seen the video of the bees killing a murder hornet, though?
I'll get to that.
Good.
So, yeah. In Washington, only a few dead murder hornet specimens have been found. Up in Canada, though, they've managed to track down some nests. Here's the New York Times talking about how that went down for one bee person.
In November, a single hornet was seen in White Rock, British Columbia, perhaps 10 miles away from the discoveries in Washington State, likely too far for the hornets to be part of the same colony. Even earlier, there had been a hive discovered on Vancouver Island across a strait that probably was too wide for a hornet to have crossed from the mainland. Crews were able to track down the hive on Vancouver Island. Conrad Berube, a beekeeper and entomologist in the town of Nanaimo, was assigned to exterminate it. He set out at night, when the hornets would be in their nest. He put on shorts and thick sweatpants, then his bee suit. He donned Kevlar braces on his ankles and wrists, but as he approached the hive, he said, the rustling of the brush and the shine of his flashlight awakened the colony. Before he had a chance to douse the nest with carbon dioxide, he felt the first searing stabs in his leg, through the bee suit and underlying sweatpants. Quote, it was like having red-hot thumbtacks being driven into my flesh, he said. He ended up getting stung at least 7 times, some of the stings drawing blood. Junichi Takahashi, a researcher at Kyoto Sangjo University in Japan, said the species had earned the murder hornet nickname there because its aggressive group attacks can expose victims to doses of toxic venom equivalent to that of a venomous snake. A series of stings can be fatal. The night he got stung, Mr. Berube still managed to eliminate the nest and collect samples, but the next day, his legs were aching as if he had the flu. Of the thousands of times he has been stung in his lifetime of work, he said the Asian giant hornet stings were the most painful. And he only got stung 7 times and said that.
I do like his commitment to the job, though. He was like...
Well, once you're that far in...
He's being just fucking swarmed in the middle of the night in darkness by these murder hornets. He's like, no, finish the job.
Yeah, I mean...
If I die, I die.
Once you're getting stung by him, it's like, all right, well, I'm already head over heels into this. The least I could do is take out the nest.
But like, I think most people wouldn't even be clear-headed enough to like... I feel like most people would go into just a primal state of fear. You wouldn't be able to like point your like poison cannon at the...
Well, that's why they sent in a pro, Elliot.
They did. The best of the best.
Yeah, exactly.
And even he barely walked away with his life.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's pretty scary, but again, a lot scarier for honeybees. As one beekeeper told the Times, most people are scared to get stung by them. We're scared that they're going to totally destroy our hives. And elsewhere in the article, they describe a beekeeper encountering exactly that, a totally destroyed hive. Quote, in his decades of beekeeping, Ted McFall had never seen anything like it. As he pulled his truck up to check on a group of hives near Custer, Washington in November, he could spot from the window a mess of bee carcasses on the ground. As he looked closer, he saw a pile of dead members of the colony in front of a hive and more carnage inside. Thousands and thousands of bees with their heads torn from their bodies and no sign of a culprit. It's like the fucking Jonestown of bees that he stumbled on.
Crazy. Interestingly, because bees over in Japan have evolved alongside the murder hornets, they've come up with their own defense mechanisms for when their hives get raided. And this is what I was talking about earlier.
Yeah,
it's very cool to see. Hundreds of bees will link up and form a tight ball around the murder hornet, vibrating in unison to produce heat. That raises the temperature inside the ball to over 115 degrees Fahrenheit or 46 degrees Celsius, a temperature that the bees can handle, but the hornet cannot. It takes a while to cook the murder hornet, but also a lot of bees die in the process. But this is the reason why murder hornets haven't driven bees completely extinct back in Asia, though.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you live in Arizona or Southern California, by God, we might beat these murder hornets. They'll start flying down and be like, ooh, too hot.
Oh, hace calor. I don't know why it's Mexican.
The murder hornets with little sombreros on.
No, they're Japanese.
Yeah, okay.
And I don't know how to say anything in Japanese.
Okay.
Now, that's cool and all, but unfortunately, Western honeybees, the ones we have, they do not have this same survival instinct. They're completely out of the loop on how this works. So scientists and agriculture departments are really looking to track down murder hornet nests and destroy them as soon as possible before things get out of control, because it could be bad. Now, this involves setting traps, using thermal imaging to locate the underground nests, and maybe even attaching RF trackers to hornets that they catch and trap so they can follow them home to their nests.
Cool.
This quote is badass. While most bees would be unable to fly with a disruptive marker attached, that is not the case with the Asian giant hornet. It is big enough to handle the extra load.
You know what? I mean, I'm very interested to see how this plays out. I don't want them decimating the honeybee population, but like the tracking and destruction of murder hornet nests is something I'm very interested in.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a really like fulfilling job because you're like literally saving a species.
Exactly, and taking away a species that no one wants.
Yeah, you're like basically hunting down nature's terrorists. You're looking for like the Osama bin Laden of insects.
Yeah, no, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, another one they're like I don't know, the RF thing. It's like that might not work. We're looking into it, but they're like these things are so big that we could like attach a streamer and just glue a streamer to their back and send them flying. And you can follow it because it's just this like
it's
ribbon
like the old,
flying.
like I think in one of the CKY videos back in a long, long time ago, before you all were born, they put that bee in the freezer and they tied a string to it, and then they woke up and they were taking it for a walk.
Yeah, pretty much.
Kind of like that.
Kind of like that. Much bigger bee, though.
What I think would be a lot cooler, though, is that they just get like little drones with like lasers powerful enough to like blast them. And then you just fly the drone with those glasses on like the drone racers have.
Yeah.
And just go after the nest, just blasting away murder hornets.
Like, yeah, again, just like the war on terror, drone pilots
evolved.
Out in some trailer in Nevada, they come home to their wife and kids, like, how was work today? They're like, fine. But they're dying inside because they decimated an entire population of murder hornets.
And that drone plays Flight of the Bumblebee the entire time, just so they can hear it coming. Anyways, it's time for our weekly check-in with our good pal, Phil Arrigo, who is becoming quite the chef in quarantine.
He is.
Thank God, though, that we can talk to Phil because this is our tech show, and we haven't really talked about tech news today.
It was a very slow tech news week.
Yeah, we talked about Elon Musk's kid's name, where when you pronounce it, it just sounds like static coming out of your mouth.
Yeah.
So that was kind of taken over there. But Phil, do you have any actual tech news for us?
Hey, so it's safe to say that pretty much everybody is spending more time at home these days. It's also safe to say that while home, the majority of people are using some sort of internet to work or to stay occupied. Internet usage has not only increased since we locked down, but it's also changed. If you stop to think about it, yeah, it makes sense that everyone's Zooming and watching more Netflix, but there's no sports, so people are tuning into less ESPN. It doesn't take a high level of Malcolm Gladwell or Freakonomics analysis to figure out that as the world changes, internet usage changes too. But if you find where money, power, and fear intersect amongst tech in these strange and trying times, and you follow that rotten smell, you get to ISPs and net neutrality. If you're a longtime viewer of the show, or even go back to the ETC days, you know I'm a big proponent of net neutrality. And the closest thing I have to a nemesis is this guy, Andrew Pai. He's the head of the FCC, and his rap sheet includes working at Verizon, then weaseling his way into the FCC, and then killing net neutrality. In case you've missed one of my 700 rants on this, what is net neutrality? Well, it's the principle that all internet traffic is treated equally. When in place, it prevents telecoms from prioritizing certain traffic for their own gains. For instance, let's say Comcast was letting their own streaming content reach consumers quickly and at full resolution while throttling their competitor Netflix, so Netflix sucks and looks like shit, so Netflix may lose customers until they pay Comcast for that bandwidth. It also prevents telecoms from creating fast and slow lanes for traffic. Imagine if AT&T launched a sponsored fast lane with 4 priority. You don't have to imagine what would happen because in 2018 they placed their own services in those fast lanes. Well, net neutrality was the law when Ajappai became head of the FCC. His first order of business was killing it, and he succeeded. So now you have the net neutrality origin story. You can watch the sequels and not ask anybody what's going on. So let's fly by the seat of our pants while I hit you what's happening right now. This week, a judge ordered the FCC to hand over fake net neutrality comments. What does that mean, Phil? Well, when Ajappai started to murder net neutrality in 2017, his agency was mandated to open up their site to comments from the general public. And they did just that until comments supporting net neutrality magically disappeared, while droves of carbon copy comments supporting its death appeared. How shady were the fake comments? You know, some of the people commented were dead, so I'd say pretty fake. Once lawmakers caught wind of this Scooby-Doo level caper in 2018, they demanded records of the comments, and FCC lawyers refused to turn the records over. Why? They claimed that the fake comments did not affect the net neutrality outcome. Hit me with a quote from Tom Johnson, head counsel for the FCC. Rather than dwell on how accurately automated or form submissions reflect actual popular support, the Commission has instead focused on encouraging robust participation in its proceedings. So rather than focus on the comments, the FCC encourages robust participation. Like what? Should I have taken a day off of work and driven down to 1 FCC Boulevard and banged on the door till they gave me a meeting? The way I interpret his response is, the comments didn't matter. So what's the point if they're real or fake? Well, it's time to turn over those server logs, Tommy. This whole thing smacks of something they hoped would just fade away over time. But 3 years later, it just kind of floated up in the river like a dead body. Well, part 2 of this whole thing about ISPs is how they've reacted to everything that's going on. Prior to the world as we know it, ending, many telecoms had data caps in place. If you look at this image, you can see plenty of them, we're charging you if you went over your data cap. Why do they have data caps? Well, they claim it's to ensure their network is at peak performance and that heavy users don't reach speeds for everyone else. This is completely believable except for these leaked memos from 2015 that state, it's not true. Despite this, data caps remained in place until COVID-19, and most ISPs' response was to waive them. I can't complain about that. That's the one thing in the world I can't complain about. But as people continue to pummel their internet connections with 4K Netflix streams and billions of Zoom calls, things are still working just fine. Common sense is seeping into the conversation, and people are asking, well, are you going to waive these things once we go back to normal, if things go back to normal? Which takes us back to net neutrality. COVID-19 shines a flashlight on the creaky argument that increased internet usage will kill internet providers, and that net neutrality will be the nail in the coffin that makes them dead for good. Turns out the opposite is true. Traffic surging, new platforms and apps are gobbling up gigabytes of data, caps are gone, and well, you're watching this on the internet, aren't you? I'm a broken record on this, but it feels good to have proof that we've been lied to by these big companies. It's like when you're a kid and your parents say a toy's broken just because they don't want you to play with it, but you pick up the toy and it works, and you're like, what the fuck? I know I'm 4, but Dad, come on. Look, the internet's fine. Now let's get them to kill data caps once this is all over, so I can go to a restaurant and live stream the loud asshole sitting next to me, without going from my data plan. Did you hear him chewing? What the fuck?
Well, thank you, Phil. You did have tech news for us.
Yeah,
we
thanks.
appreciate you. And also, great job on the food videos.
Yes. He's making them just like the pros, all chopped up and edited.
He is. It's good shit. I want to see more.
Phil with time on his hands, they say an idle hand is the devil's dingling. Not for Phil. He's actually doing a lot of good stuff.
Yep.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's all the news for today. If you, again, more tech news in yesterday's episode about Elon Musk filming a movie in space with Tom Cruise, maybe. And also naming his child just the most insufferable, terrible name. A baby.
I love the memes, though. People are putting the kid's name and how he's going to act as he's growing up.
Yeah. And also the most recent Weekly Weird News, if you haven't watched it already.
Yeah. There you go. Check it out. We'll see you soon.
Bye.